Hello, everyone, and welcome to this meditation session. I'm really glad to be here with you in this pretty challenging time. My name is Jon Krop, and I'm going to be leading this session. I'd like to give you just a little bit of background on me. So as I said, my name is Jon Krop. Hello. I'm a lawyer, a longtime meditator, and a teacher of meditation. I'm also the founder of a company called Mindfulness for Lawyers, and I specialize in teaching mindfulness and meditation to legal professionals. And so we're going to be doing a little bit of that today. So, obviously there's only one thing on everyone's minds right now, and that's this awful pandemic, and also the stress and anxiety that it's bringing into all of our lives. So that's what I want to address today. Now, of course, the most important thing by far is to take the necessary physical precautions to minimize risk to yourself and to minimize risk to other people. That's the number one priority. But you might notice that even when you're doing everything right, even when you're taking all the necessary steps, the stress and anxiety are still there. So even though our external response is the most important thing, because this is an actual public health crisis, it's still worthwhile to pay attention to our internal response and to see if we can learn to respond in a more skillful way, in a way that doesn't cause us as much unnecessary suffering. And if you do that, it doesn't just improve your well-being, it also makes you more effective. So you'll be more clear-headed, more present, and better able to sort of focus on what's actually in front of you, whether that's your work or the people you care about. So what I want to do is share a meditation technique that can help you deal more skillfully with the stress and anxiety that we're all feeling right now. And the way it does this is by homing in on one of the biggest contributors to our stress and anxiety, and that's rumination. The tendency to get caught up and spin around in our own mental stories. So this technique that we're going to try helps curb rumination in two big ways. One, it grounds us in our bodies. And when we're sort of anchored down in our bodies, there's less of a tendency to float up into our heads and get pulled into our thoughts. And the way that we ground ourselves in the body in this practice is by tuning into the sensations of breathing. And I'll guide you through how specifically we're going to do that in this practice. Now, the second way this technique curbs rumination is it helps break the hold that our thoughts can have on us, especially our negative thoughts. And it does so through a method called labeling, which I will also guide you through during the meditation. Now, let's get started. So for this meditation, it is fine to just sit comfortably in your chair. Maybe just try not to slouch, but other than that, you can just sort of sit normally. And then rest your hands, palms down on your thighs or on your knees. You just don't want them so far forward that they pull your shoulders forward. You want your shoulders to be kind of relaxed. And then just sit with this nice upright, sort of dignified, alert posture, even if you're resting against the chair back, being comfortable. Then let your head balance in a natural, relaxed way on your neck. Close your eyes if you're comfortable with that. And then we'll begin our meditation. Now, in this practice, as with most forms of meditation, we are intentionally directing our attention to something. So for this one, we're bringing our attention to a specific sensation, and that's the sensation of the abdomen rising and falling as we breathe. Now, these are physical touch sensations. You can physically feel the expansion and contraction of your abdomen, and maybe the way that it pushes or rubs against your clothing as well. And if you can't find the breath at the abdomen, or if you lose it at any point during the meditation, you can find it by just putting a hand on your stomach for a few seconds. So let's just take a moment and find that rising and falling sensation at the abdomen. Okay, now that we've found the breath at the abdomen, let's form a gentle intention to just remain there at the abdomen and to simply observe those rising and falling sensations as we breathe. These sensations form what's called our anchor. They are how we ground ourselves in our bodies and in the present moment. And if your attention wanders off, that's not any sort of mistake. It's actually what's supposed to happen. So you just notice that wandering and gently escort your attention back to the rise and fall at the abdomen. So let's just stay with those rising and falling sensations for a few moments now. Now, at this point, you may already have noticed just how easy it is to get distracted by sounds in the background, by sensations in your own body, and especially by thoughts. Now, this isn't any sort of a problem. When it becomes a problem is when our thoughts grab onto us and won't let go, and we get lost in their stories, which are so often negative stories. So here's a method for dealing with that tendency. For the rest of this meditation session, even though you're mainly going to be paying attention to the rising and falling, for the rest of this meditation session, whenever you notice that you've become distracted by a thought, I want you to label the thought. In other words, I want you to say, in your mind, not out loud, I want you to say thinking. Put that label on the thought. Now, what this does is it breaks your involvement with the story of the thought. And that makes it much easier to let go of it and then to gently escort your attention back to the rise and fall of the breath at the abdomen. So now, let's continue resting our attention on that rise and fall sensation for a few moments more. But now, whenever you notice that you've gotten distracted by a thought, try applying that label, thinking, as a way to more easily let go and come back to the anchor. So let's do that now for a few moments. When the bell rings, switch your attention over to the sound of the bell. Take that sound as your new anchor. See if you can follow that sound all the way down. Try and spot the last moment you're able to hear it before it becomes too quiet to perceive. So that ends our actual meditation session. But I just want to flag that this practice is not going to make your stress and anxiety magically vanish, but it will help, and especially if you practice it regularly. And one way to make this a regular practice is to try doing it in short bursts while you're going about your day. Now, that can't really replace sitting down and actually doing it as a formal meditation like we just did, but doing it on the go is also very helpful, and it's pretty easy to do. So this practice had two main components, right? Tuning into the breath at the abdomen and labeling our thoughts. And both of those components are totally portable practices in their own right. So you can always bring your attention to the rising and falling sensation and watch 2 breaths, 3 breaths. It can really be that quick. It's like a little micro hit of mindfulness. And likewise, if you find yourself getting too involved with a negative thought, you can always label it thinking, right? You can always label it to help break its hold. So I encourage you to play with these practices, not just the formal meditation, but also playing with these as sort of on-the-go practices. So before we wrap up, let me just see if there are any questions. So sometimes people ask me, what do I do if I get tired during meditation? What if I start to get drowsy? And so, by the way, I just want to flag that this is an incredibly common thing. Everyone is going to feel sleepy or drowsy at some point during meditation practice. Even if you're well rested, by the way, what's called meditative dullness can arise. It's a form of drowsiness that arises in meditation, even if you are well rested. Okay, so what can we do about this? Well, this sort of snide answer is get more sleep, but I'm not going to give that answer because I know that's easier said than done. So there are what you can call antidotes to drowsiness that you can apply during meditation to help sort of brighten your mind up a little bit and keep you sharp. So I'll just share some of those antidotes. So the first one that you want to try if you're starting to get drowsy is you just want to open your eyes. Meditate with eyes open for a little bit until you feel brighter, sharper, and then close your eyes again and continue on meditating. If you get drowsy again, open your eyes again, right? It's totally okay to meditate with eyes open. And you can repeat that as many times as you need to. Now, if you've tried that a few times and you're still getting drowsy, then the next step is to open your eyes and stand. Meditate standing up for a little while till you feel sharper, sit back down, close your eyes, repeat as needed, okay? And by the way, I see now that there are questions, so sorry about that. I think there was just like a little delay in showing me the questions, so I'll grab one or more of these afterwards. But anyway, so stand up and sit back down. Another one that you can do if that doesn't work is, this is a technique that one of my teachers taught me, where you clench all the muscles in your body, clench your stomach, chest, your arms, until you actually start to shake. I don't know if you can see, but I'm actually shaking a little bit. And then let go. And then do it again. And then let go. Maybe 2 or 3 times like that in rapid succession. That will really wake you up. But the danger with that technique, where you really clench the muscles and then let go, is if you overdo that one, it will agitate your mind. And actually, an agitated mind is just as unhelpful as a dull mind. So I would say don't repeat that one. If you're going to use that one, use it just once. Okay? And then if that doesn't work, the next step is to just go to the kitchen, go to a sink and splash some water on your face and then sit back down. So those are just some tips for dealing with sleepiness, drowsiness, tiredness during meditation. And actually looking at the questions, I see that someone did ask, what do I do if I get tired? So perfect. That worked out. Let's see. Okay, I see 2 related questions that I will sort of combine. And by the way, I know we're at 18 past the hour, so please feel free to go at any point. This is just the sort of Q&A section. So I'm gonna hang for a little bit and answer some of these questions. And those of you who are leaving, thank you so much for coming and sharing this experience with us. Be well, stay safe. All right, so back to the questions. I see, what is the best time to meditate? And is there an app you suggest using as guidance? Okay, 2 great questions. What is the best time to meditate? Now, generally speaking, meditation teachers tend to be an accommodating sort. So you'll often hear things like, well, it really depends from person to person. There's no right way. I disagree. There is a right way. It's my way. But in seriousness, though, I do have a suggestion here. I think that the best thing to do is to meditate first thing in the morning before you do anything else. So for me, I wake up, I roll out of bed, I use the bathroom if I need to, and then I meditate. I don't pick out my clothes for the day. I don't eat breakfast. I definitely don't check my phone. And the reason for this is not because there's something inherently magical about morning meditation. It's simply because I and a lot of people have found that doing it first thing in the morning before you do anything else, before your day really starts and the franticness of the day starts, that is when you are likeliest to actually do it. So just as a matter of building the habit of regular meditation, doing it first thing in the morning is, in my view, by far the best. And that consistency of practice where you're actually meditating regularly, preferably daily, even if it's for just a couple of minutes, that is the best way to start to see lasting benefits from meditation practice. You want to try and be consistent. So first thing in the morning helps with that. So that's my recommendation. If you can't do first thing in the morning for whatever reason, I suggest at least trying to do it at the same time every day, because then you can develop a habit around it. It sort of ritualizes it a little bit. This person also asked, is there an app you suggest using as guidance? Yeah, so I like apps. I think that sometimes it's nice to have guidance. Sometimes it's nice to sit in silence. And as you gain a little bit more experience with meditation practice, you might find that you start to trend more towards liking the silence. But whenever you feel like using guidance, you should absolutely use it. It's a wonderful thing, and I'm so glad that these apps exist. In fact, my mom uses an app. She uses Headspace. And in fact, that's what actually got her meditating, because I guess it was not good enough for her that her son has sort of built his whole life around it, but that's sort of a different story. We won't go there. So my mom really likes Headspace. My favorite is an app called 10% Happier. And the reason that I really like 10% Happier is because instead of just having one person lead the meditations, they manage to get the greatest living, a collection of the greatest living English-speaking meditation teachers to do the guided meditation. So it's really an incredible opportunity. People who are sort of my celebrities. Some of you might know these names, some of you might not, but people like Joseph Goldstein, Sharon Salzberg, these are the people that I look up to, and they're the ones leading those guided meditations. So once again, it's called 10% Happier. That's the app that I like. And there are more questions, and I don't really have anywhere to go. So again, you can feel free to drop off at any time, and thank you again for being here. But let me see what else we got here. How long should a meditation session last? Okay. People often want a very concrete answer here. They want me to say 10 minutes is the minimum, but I can't do that. There is no concrete answer. The important thing here is to find a length of time that allows you to maintain consistency, because consistency, as I often like to say, and those of you who have worked with me in the past have probably heard me say this many times, consistency is more important than duration. So I would much rather you meditate 2 minutes a day, every day, than 2 hours a day, but only a few days a week. That's how much more I care about consistency. Okay, so you never want to pick a length of time that is so long that it threatens your consistency, because it seems like an intimidating amount of time. You think you might blow it off, so don't do that. So what I really suggest, my go-to rule of thumb for how long should I meditate is this. Find a length of time that you think that you could realistically do every day, not optimistically, realistically do every day, and you would only very rarely skip days. Find that length of time and then do a little bit less than that. Because I think those of us in the legal field, we are particularly good at pushing ourselves, right? We're good at giving 110%. We're not so good at being gentle with ourselves, taking it easy on ourselves, being kind to ourselves. And meditation is really much more along those lines. So this is a good way to practice that. So if you think that you could realistically do 15 minutes every day, almost never skip a day, great, do 12. If you think you could do 10, do 8. If you could do 5, do 3. So that's my recommendation on length of time. And this is not sort of a cop-out, okay? Because I can't stress how much more the building of the habit is than the length of time. And even a little bit of meditation can make a really powerful difference. And then, by the way, if you set your timer for your 8 minutes or 3 minutes or whatever it is, and the timer rings or the bell rings, there's nothing stopping you from putting 5 more minutes on that timer and sitting for a little longer, right? So it's just a floor. You always sit for longer. All right, let me see what else we got here. Some people are just being really nice. Thank you, be safe. It's very kind of you, thank you. Let's see. What do we have here? Do I recommend meditating several short times per day or having one long meditation session? Good question. Thanks to whoever sent me that question. Both are excellent approaches. And I think that the idea of doing several short practices throughout the day is a really viable thing for someone in the legal field to do, because oftentimes we're so busy. Now, granted, we all seem to have a little bit more time now, but it really depends on your style. So I will tell you, for me personally, I do the bulk of my formal meditation all at once. And the reason is just that I know that if I put it off, I won't do it. So if I say to myself, I'll do half now, half later, it never happens. I do the half now and I never do the half later. So for me, it's important that I do all my meditation, my formal meditation, in the morning. But then I'm still doing those sort of on the go mindfulness practices. Like, how I said you can tune into the rise and fall of the abdomen on the go. Even for just a couple seconds. You can label your thoughts on the go if they're really starting to grab onto you and cause problems. So I do those on the go sorts of practices constantly. And in fact, there's a piece of advice that I really love. Again, some of you who work with me may have heard this because this is one of my favorite sayings. This comes from the Tibetan meditative tradition, which is a very old, very sophisticated tradition. And so the Tibetans like to say, short sessions, many times. Short sessions, many times. And so that is a very viable and sort of classical way to practice and a valid way to practice. So yeah, both are absolutely okay. Maybe I'll take one more and then we'll call it a day. You see what we have here. When you say label it, it can be anything, not just thinking, right? E.g., anxiety or rumination. So the answer is yes, absolutely. You can use whatever label feels appropriate. And the teacher who really pioneered this labeling practice, a teacher from Burma in the early 20th century named Mahasi Sayadaw. Mahasi Sayadaw used to say, just use plain English. So it doesn't have to be fancy. If you're judging, you could just say judging. If it's a memory, you can say remembering. If it's anxiety, you can say anxiety. If it's rumination, you can say rumination. So you can absolutely do that. But I also don't want to overburden you or overcomplicate it for you. So that's why it's great when you're starting out, and it's totally okay to just say thinking, right? So, but you're absolutely right. You do have the option. Be as diverse with your labels as you like. And incidentally, on a related note, you can label other things besides your thoughts and mental phenomena. So if a really compelling sound is distracting you, you could label it by just saying hearing, right? Instead of thinking, hearing. If there's an itch that isn't really letting go and keeps coming back, you could just note feeling, or of course, itching, right? So I wanted to focus on thoughts here because I really wanted to drill down on the issue of rumination, which I think probably a good number of us are struggling with right now. So that's the mental component. But while we're talking about this, yes, any compelling distraction coming in through any of your senses, you can use this labeling method to break its hold on you. Seeing, hearing, feeling, and of course, thinking. All right, so we're almost at the half-hour mark. So I think I'm gonna wrap up here. I really enjoyed this. I hope you've enjoyed it or at least found it useful or interesting. I hope that you stay safe in these difficult times and see you again sometime. Take care. Bye.